Welcome to Top 5, a show where we count things down from number 5 all the way to number 1, and they smash and they bash, and sometimes they talk you down from doing something stupid. This week, Top 5 female superheroes, as requested by one of our members in the Major Spoilers Discord. Yes, we do have a Discord server, and yes, we do have a channel specifically devoted to Top 5, and yes, you can join it as well. All you need to do is check out the link in the show notes, and you too can join the growing number of spoilerites, hanging out, having fun, and just talking about whatever comes to mind. But this week, Top 5 female superheroes, and Rodrigo, you are here this week. How about you share your number 5?
My number 5 female superhero is Marrow from the X-Men.
Oh, from the X-Men, yeah.
I knew she was going to be there. I knew it.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I've got a lot of feels about Marrow, and Marrow is all the way down at number 5 because she was kind of done dirty in really her first big push. You know, it's like if you're a wrestling fan, you hate to see that moment where clearly somebody's being given a big push and then the management decides that actually nah, and it just goes nowhere. And I feel like that's kind of what happened to Marrow.
She got Dolph Zigglered.
Yeah, it's kind of sad because now there's I don't know if this is still the case, but X-23 became Wolverine, and there's like an even babyer Wolverine junior girl.
The honey badger, yeah.
Yeah. And I just think there was a moment in time where there could have been a successor to Wolverine that wasn't Wolverine Girl, because that's how I felt she was being set up. She was, in the Zero Tolerance run, she was really raw and had a lot of like bad, feelings, and had a lot of vendettas, some against her own teammates, and she had some good interactions with Wolverine, and I really thought, this could be a successor to what Wolverine is, and they could play really well off each other. And then it just kind of didn't happen. There's some other timeline where, all the X-Men movies have Marrow in them, which is maybe a good thing because half of them are terrible. So maybe it is a good thing that we're not in that timeline. But yeah, my number 5, great potential, completely squandered, Marrow from the X-Men.
There you go. I like that one. My number 5, also an alternate timeline where things are quite different. And in this case, she hasn't been around for a long time, couple of years. It's Spider-Gwen from the Marvel Universe. What would happen if Gwen Stacy got bitten by a radioactive spider? And, her best friend that died was Peter Parker. He was not the chameleon. He was the
lizard.
The lizard in that universe. If you've seen the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse animated movie, the greatest Spider-Man story ever made, then you know who Spider-Gwen is. She's had a couple of comic book series, and right now I think she is appearing in The Ghost Spider as of this writing. She may be appearing in other places. I like her attitude. I like the fact that she's a pretty cool musician. She's a drummer, or sometimes a drummer whenever she's in the Mary Jane. Sometimes she's not. But I kind of dig her style. I kind of dig her... the reason why she is doing everything. I just find her super fascinating on so many different levels. She was not immediately brought to life just to be a cheesecake version of Spider-Man, but Spider-Gwen is definitely one of my top 5 female superheroes of the moment. Matthew, who do you have at number 5?
My number 5 is, like Rodrigo's number 5, an X-Man, but unlike Rodrigo's number 5, she is A, not purple, B, keeps all of her bones inside of her flesh, and C, is a founding member of the team. And it's actually a little difficult to talk about a character who's been around and been through as many iterations as Jean Grey, specifically Phoenix, has. But when you look at those early issues, Phoenix as Marvel Girl is essentially one of Stan Lee's housewife heroines. She pines after Cyclops, and she takes care of the team, and she kind of keeps things in check and is occasionally part of a love triangle between herself, Angel, and Cyclops. But eventually, she realizes that her powers are getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And in X-Men number 99 or so, she sort of kind of dies and comes back from the dead in one of the perfect superhero costumes, in a costume that is a Dave Cockrum design that cannot be topped, the green and gold Phoenix costume. And she's literally the most powerful thing in the Marvel Universe. Now, granted, it's 1976. There isn't a lot in the Marvel Universe, comparatively speaking, to what there is now. She's actually name-checked as being more powerful than Thor, which is 1976's way of telling you this is the most powerful creature you've ever met. And eventually, she realizes that she's losing her mind, and she's going to kill, and she has killed, and she will kill again, and decides that in order to keep that from happening, she sacrifices herself in order to keep from killing more people and to keep, the Shi'ar Empire from destroying the entirety of the Earth. Now, every single thing that I have told you, with the exception of the word Jean and the word gray, has been retconned and is probably no longer true. But the fact is, Phoenix is still one of the perfect costumes, probably the best take on Jean Grey, maybe the best take on any X-Man rather, because every single X-Man of note has had their Dark whomever. We've had Dark Wolverine, we've had Dark Cyclops, we've had Dark Nightcrawler, and the reason why is because Phoenix did it first and Phoenix did it best. And if anybody knows of a costume better than that original Phoenix costume, I will physically fight you to tell you you're wrong.
You mean the one with the sash, like the green one with the sash?
Yep, gold hip boots, gold evening gloves, a green, basically kind of a unitard, the gold sash, and then the black and gold Phoenix right across her neck and clavicles. Now, later costumes made that Phoenix huge, but that original one is small, and it really kind of balances everything out. It's a great look, especially with huge, giant red hair, the way that Cockrum used to draw her.
All right, there you go. Rodrigo, what do you have for number 4? We had a lot of Marvel characters on our list for our number 5 positions.
That's
What's
my
going to
last
happen?
Marvel character, actually. I said one character from each universe, so.
Oh, there you go. All 5 universes represented in Matthew's list. So my number 4 is a superhero from a little baby TV show called PJ Masks.
Yeah.
My number 4 is Owlette. And really, she's here to represent the PJ Masks in general, who kind of exist as a amorphous blob of character. I love the PJ Masks because they're little kids, they go to maybe first grade, and they only fight at night because they 1,000 question marks get their power from their pajamas, question marks. So it's great because they'll go out to their playground, and all the playground equipment has clearly been stolen. They're like, we have to investigate this in 8 hours when the sun goes down. So they have to wait till it's bedtime, and then they can transform into the PJ Mask and go investigate it. Unfortunately, the bad guys just wait. Also, there are no adults in this world. I mean, you see their teacher, but you never see their parents. It's been a while since I've seen an episode of PJ Masks, so maybe that's been introduced now. But it's just such a weird little world. And Owlette, it operates by different rules than the real world, and it really makes these little characters shine. Each PJ Mask comes with 3 little powers. They've gained more because they want to sell toys that also change their costumes since then. But yeah, it's super cute. It's a cute show for kids, and I love that there's a ninja guy in it, and he has a ninja squadron, and he calls them the Ninjalinos. So
That's funny.
Yeah. No, it's really cute. It's one of the better, less annoying Disney shows. Although the song is an earworm if you've ever heard it. So my number 4, Owlette, kind of representing for the PJ Masks.
All right, there you go. My number 4 from the DC universe. She is Supergirl. One Kara Zor-El. Or I don't know if she gets a different name in the different reboots. I will say I'm not a fan of Silver Age Supergirl, oftentimes because she comes off as, somewhat mopey, I guess.
Kind of a weepy sort of parody of what a teenage girl is supposed to act like in 1964.
Yeah,
I
and
think
always hanging around
Supergirl-
in the wish fulfillment territory, right? I wish I had a boyfriend, or I wish I had friends to hang out with, or I wish someone would understand me, that kind of stuff. So I'm not a big fan of Silver Age Supergirl. What were you going to say, Rodrigo?
I think across all time, Supergirl can frequently suffer from being a bad stereotype of what a 40-year-old male writer thinks a teenage girl is like.
Well, if you think that's bad, then you should check out Matrix Supergirl, which is also a horrible version of Supergirl. And you may be saying, well, Stephen, you've got, there's like a million different versions of Supergirl. Which one version of Supergirl do you like? And I actually like the Supergirl from Superman, the animated series. This girl that comes to Earth, doesn't really know what it's like, is created and portrayed as someone who is a teenager who's grown up on Argo City and really understands what it was like to be a teenager before she came to Earth. So she gets to learn things in a different way, but she's also got these built-in ideas of what she should be doing. And every time, Clark is like, no, you got to hold yourself back and you can't do this or you can't do that. But Supergirl is always willing to go out there and do the right thing, to stand up to the bad guys, to go in and, be cool about it, I guess. And I just really like her portrayal on Superman, the animated series, and in the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited series after that. I think that is a super well done version of Supergirl. And even though we may have other versions, we may have the Michael Turner version of Supergirl, we may have what's the current version? What's the one we reviewed recently, Matthew, where it was like a different Earth, but she's in high school and on the track team or something? I forget what that series was.
I don't think that was an Earth one. I think that was Supergirl being super. I like that one.
Yeah. That one was really good too. But I think there's something about Supergirl who, walks between two worlds. She knows what she has lost, so she has a greater respect, I think, for things that she has now and is willing to go a little bit further to protect those things that she has now. But at the same time, she's not the weepy, mopey person from the Silver Age when she was just introduced. So that's why Supergirl is my number 4. Matthew, who do you have for your number 4? What's that?
That Supergirl is actually Kara Inze rather than Kara Zor-El.
Which one are we talking about?
The animated universe, Superman, the animated series, the white baby tee and the miniskirt.
Yeah, that's
she's
Kara
not
Zor-El.
Actually, no, she's Kara Inze. She comes from another planet called Argos, because the Superman animated series has slightly different continuity.
Oh, whatever. Supergirl from the DC animated series.
I'm not correcting you. I'm helping.
Yes.
You are correct. That is an awesome Supergirl.
That is correct. And Matthew, what do you have for your number 4?
Neither one is a shape-shifting monster.
Exactly. Except for the one that is a kind of a shape-shifting monster, but that's Power Girl. But that's a different story.
Be nice. Power Girl was only a shape-shifting monster 16, 18 times. So here's the thing about Matthew. If you've never listened to Top 5 before, first of all, welcome. Second of all, I am super nerdy. And as you just heard, I have a tendency to kind of go, well, I try not to say, actually. Hopefully
True, that's right. He doesn't say, actually.
I do not literally say
actually
those words.
Using you. Yes,
Charlie Schumer has that copyrighted now.
Yeah.
That's right. But more importantly, I really like to deep dive into weird stuff. And sometimes I like to go into things that make my castmates roll their eyes. So we're going to talk for just a moment about my number 4. From the world of Super Sentai. My number 4 is Ninja White from 1994's, Ninja Sentai Kakuranger, which is fun to say. Her name is Tsuruhime, and she is the greatest ninja of her generation. She's also 15 years old, and she has a couple of important distinctions. If you know Super Sentai in America is adapted as Power Rangers, and it's basically color-coded teams. You got a red guy who's usually the leader. You have a blue guy who's usually the sidekick. Yellow, you got green or black. Sometimes you got pink. Sometimes you have white. Tsuruhime is a white, but she is the very first non-red team leader in Super Sentai history. More importantly, she is the first, and I think to date the only, female team lead in Super Sentai history. So this is the 16th season, the 16th iteration of the Super Sentai team. They have a Red Ranger, He's not the leader. So the Red Ranger is not only the youngest, not only the White Ranger, but she's also really pretty cool. And interestingly, if you know your Super Sentai tropes, having the Red not be the leader doesn't necessarily become the focus of everything. Sometimes you'll see, well, the Red should be in charge, and whoever else is in charge is going to be conflicting with the Red. We see that sometimes in Mega Ranger and other things, and you probably don't care about that. But here's the thing. Tsuruhime, Ninja White, actually comes back 15 years later in the 35th anniversary Super Sentai series. And she shows up, and she's 33 years old, and she's still an awesome secret killer ninja. And at one point, the heroes are like, oh, what are we going to do? And they don't realize that there's this super killer ninja in the background. And the most important part, my friends, this is the thing that has been unspoken in everything that I've said. Her code name is Ninja White. Her costume is entirely Snow White. Now, you hear about ninjas hiding. There's 12 of them in the room with you right now. But every time you see a ninja, it's like, oh, well, he's wearing, this black outfit that allows him to hide anywhere. Tsuruhime's costume is entirely white. This is a woman who can hide in her own shadow. And that, my friends, is how she gets to be my number 4. Also, she's pretty awesome and kind of cute.
All right, there we go. We have moved up the list to our number 3s. And Rodrigo, who do you have for your number 3?
My number 3 is kind of both a Marvel and DC character in that it's an amalgam character.
Oh, no.
I knew it was coming.
Yeah. So my number 3 is Amazon from Amalgam, which is an amalgamation of Storm and Wonder Woman. Difficult to search online on account of Amazon.com being our space overlords. But what I like about, I guess mainly what I like about Amazon is that she has some of the few amalgam stories that are actually good, because as awesome as Amalgam was, going back and reading some of them, they are oh my God, they're so bad. You guys, they're just so bad. And I remember reading the Amazon ones and being like, I can make sense of this. I know what is happening. But as it's one that combines two characters in a very good way, because it has the phenomenal cosmic power of Storm with the physical power of Wonder Woman, but also it brings in all of the mythology stuff, and really places a Black female person at the center of the world of Amalgam. She's one of the heavy hitters of Amalgam. She occupies the same space as Wonder Woman there. So I don't know. There's Amalgam was a weird little experiment, and I think sometimes we get really caught up on who's this guy and this guy. What if they made this guy and this guy? And there's definitely a lot of that going on, but Amazon just always seemed like one of the more fully realized ideas in Amalgam, and is actually a character that I would enjoy reading, not just because X-Men stuff and Wonder Woman stuff is very distant from each other a lot of the time, so marrying that seemed very interesting, but just because it's like, here's a character that kind of right out of the gate makes sense, unlike some of the other ones where they have to do a lot of explaining as to why this robot man now has a Green Lantern power kind of thing.
Very cool. Very, very cool. All right. I think we are up to my number 3. And I think that when you look at the world of superheroes, you've got superheroes who are strong, who can punch through everything. You have superheroes who can outthink everyone else, or move quick enough to outthink everyone else, to outmaneuver anyone else. But then in this weird corner of the superhero universes, magic resides. And magic is its own weird, unique thing because magic can outdo Superman. Just hands down, Superman is allergic to magic.
Mhm.
And it's not often that you get, I guess from the very beginning, we've had magic superheroes, right? And in fact, they've been members of the Justice Society and other generations. But I kind of like the story of Zatanna Zatara. Her father disappears. Depending on which story you're reading, it's because he's trying to save her and he gets zapped away to another dimension or something like that. And she's super, super guilty on stuff. But Zatanna, like her father, wants to be a stage magician or is a stage magician. But the only difference between Zatanna and David Copperfield are her lovely stockings, of course, is that she performs real magic.
Yeah,
and
but you don't know what David Copperfield was wearing under his pants, so
I think we do. I think we do. But Zatanna, on the other hand, she performs real magic by talking backwards. And it's a clever gimmick. It is something that you don't necessarily have to read what she is saying, stop thieves backwards or whatever that she's saying. You don't have to, forget Batman, you don't have to know what the words are, though if you want the extra challenge and you want to read everything literally backwards, you can do that. But I like this idea of Zatanna the magician who is kind of sucked into the world of superheroing because of her father's legacy. But at the same time, I think she would rather just deal with her weird corner of magic and the magic universe and not deal with anyone else. But say for that one weird identity crisis thing, I dig Zatanna. I really like her. I think she's cool. I think she's interesting. I think we don't see enough magic, pure magic users, like stage magician type magics in comic books. And
that's because they're very hard to write.
Well, they are, but also because everyone wants to say, oh, well, the only good magicians are John Constantine, and that's it. And then it's like, well, but you've got so many other people. No, it's only John Constantine. Maybe the Phantom Stranger. Well, what about Dr. Fate? He doesn't count. He's a god.
Definitely those guys have everybody has their niche guy that they want to bring in. It's you can tell who the Lawrence Blood fans are.
Right.
In comics, it's you're not going to see Zatanna in that comic.
Right. So for me, if I were to pick a magic user for any team, it would be Zatanna. Just hands down. I don't care. I think she is the most interesting. I think she is the one that might not fully understand her powers as much as maybe other people do. But she's definitely my number 3, top 5 favorite female superhero. Matthew, who do you have for your number 3?
My number 3 is an interesting case because when you talk about comic book history, it's a little bit difficult because comic books actually predate the regular, what we think of as a superhero. Comic books actually go back to the early 1930s, sometimes as early as 34, depending on what your definition of a comic book is. 1938, we get Superman, and you're like, well, hey, surely they had female superheroes early in those days. And people are like, sure they did. Like Wonder Woman. And someone says to me, Wonder Woman, the first superheroine. And I'm going to say no, for 2 reasons. Stop saying heroine. And 2, no, she wasn't the first. The first, and of course there's an asterisk next to anything related to comics firsts, but the first female comics superhero was my number 3, Phantoma. Created by Fletcher Hanks back when he called himself Barclay Flagg, which, by the way, should be a superhero alias. I'm going to be Barclay Flagg, agent of Phantom. Phantoma is a very strange case because if you say a superhero has to have a code name and powers, has to have that pro-social agenda, has to have, something going on, there's that weird kind of fourth era of maybe one of those things doesn't fit, but they're all sort of there. Phantoma fits all of the things. She has a specific suit that she wears. Now, granted, it's a little black dress like you'd see from Chanel. And her code name, Phantoma, that's a good code name. She hangs out in the jungle. She fights evil guys. Early on, she fights evil guys kind of in the same crazy, whacked out way that Stardust the Super Wizard did, also a Fletcher Hanks joint, where she transforms into this floating blue skull-headed creature and just annihilates them with the power of sheer unadulterated magic. Later on, she sort of settles down into more of a Jungle Girl type storyline. There were literally dozens of Jungle Girls in the 40s, most of whom were actually knocking off Sheena, the Jungle Girl, rather than Phantoma herself. But she came first, so we're going to say they're knocking her off. And most importantly, and you may poo-poo me when I say this, but most importantly, when it comes to Phantoma, you can easily get all of her appearances and read them in one afternoon. And I kind of like that. I kind of like being able to say this is the length and the breadth and the scope of this character's adventures. Wacky stuff happens. The wacky stuff ends. The story gets an ending. We move on. We have some dip. You know, it's nice to have Spider-Man around for 85 years. It's nice to have Wonder Woman around since the dawn of the Pleistocene era. But it's also nice to be able to look at all of the adventures and just go, these are all nuts and I love them. And I want her to be my friend. And that is why the first female superhero asterisk, Phantoma, is my number 3.
All right, very cool. Now for our number 2s. This is where it becomes really, really tough because I'm betting our number 2s could easily be our number 1s, and the number 1s could easily be the number 2s. There's only one way to find out for sure, and that's to have them fight. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, wait, no, this isn't comic books. This is a podcast where we talk about pop culture and nerdery things. And we'd love for this show to continue and to produce more shows for you week after week. But we also know that you are constantly wanting more from us. So here's a way that we can solve everybody's problems. It's like 2 problems, 1 answer. Patreon.com/major spoilers. That's where you want to go. Kick us a few bucks if you enjoy this show. Kick us $1 an episode, $5 a month. And not only will you get access to this show and all the shows that we do on the Major Spoilers Podcast Network, you'll get access to bonus content and additional stuff where we talk about superhero craziness and Secret Identity, the series, and talk about the Flash television series and so much more. It's all over there at patreon.com/major spoilers. Thank you in advance for your support, or thank you for just going and checking it out. All right, Rodrigo. It's now time for your number 2.
All right. My number 2, we're back to Marvel. My number 2 comes from a series that kind of spawned off of another series that I really enjoy, and that is Iron Fist. And my number 2 is Wu Aoshi, who was an ancient Iron Fist. They retconned Iron Fist back in the day to have been a title rather than just something that Danny Rand had in his fist, and then proceeded to really expand the mythology both of Iron Fists themselves and also of Kunlun and everything, and the whole mystical kung fu world that Iron Fist comes from during that series. And we got Aoshi, who was an ancient Iron Fist, who was a pirate and a kind of a freedom fighter, and used the same powers that Iron Fist has, that Danny Rand has, in different ways. And that's one of the cooler things that we got out of that, is that different Iron Fists use their chi powers in different ways. It also cemented the idea that literally not just horizontally every immortal weapon, but also vertically every Iron Fist is cooler than Danny Rand, just by definition. And granted, most of them were invented as kind of a variation on what Iron Fist does, except for like a couple of them who were retconned into being immortal weapons. But I always like this one. She doesn't get a lot other than kind of like a backup story. They might have fleshed her out since then. I haven't been reading Iron Fist lately. But I always, as an example of that kind of proof of concept of like, what if Iron Fist in other times and places, this like kick butt pirate, like Chinese pirate lady, having this superhero powers in the ancient world, is just always seemed very cool to me.
Very nice. Very, very nice. Okay. I'm back at DC. Oh, wait, I've been at DC since we've been at my number 5. But here is a character that, hands down, could have easily been my number 1, but she's not. But she could be, but she's not. It is Batgirl. Now, not Barbara Gordon Batgirl. That's fine. If you're a Barbara Gordon Batgirl fan, that's fine. I have no problem with that. However, the more interesting Batgirl is Cassandra Cain. She comes on the scene. She can't talk. She is out of control. She may not be super smart. It's clear that she doesn't have a lot of smarts education, but she is a master martial artist. And the interesting thing about Cassandra Cain, especially when she's introduced, let's see, she was introduced, I want to say in 1990, like 99? Yeah, 99. All the way until about 2005 or so. We slowly see her go from crazed, out of control, Wolverine, Wolverine without the limiter. And we see her slowly start to learn to speak, and we slowly start to see her learn to get used to being around people. And we slowly start to learn her backstory about her dad, David Cain, and her mom, Lady Shiva, and the horrible living conditions that she was brought up in. Essentially, consistently abused by David Cain, never spoken to, never talked to, never told to speak or talk, just beating her senseless nonstop. And so we get this huge tragic backstory. And so we see her, raise herself up from being this person who is turned into a weapon into someone that can learn compassion and can make friends, especially when she does become friends with Oracle and when she does become friends with, what's her name? Tim's girlfriend, the other Robin.
Stephanie Brown.
Stephanie, yeah, spoiler. And when they do become friends and when they do become tight, her story is very, very cool. And then they kind of rebooted her and kind of made her not fun and interesting. But man, that first big run, that long run of Cassandra Cain Batgirl is really cool, very interesting, and really shows how a character develops through backstory. But that backstory is kind of given to you a little bite at a time. It's not just all, info dump. Hi, my name is Batgirl, Cassandra Cain. I grew up in a horrible living condition with my father, David Cain, and my mother, Lady Shiva. Let me tell you more about this. Oh, let's turn the page first. No, this is stuff that's spread out over months. And I just found that super fascinating, and it really draws you in and makes you feel more for this character. And Batgirl, my number 2 favorite female superhero. Matthew, what do you have for your number 2?
My number 2 came out of a time when there was a lot of world building in comics. In the year 1993, the Image Comics revolution had officially begun, and Image Comics was selling a scramptillion comic books every month. And you're saying, Matthew, what female Image comic character are you talking about? And I'm like, clearly none. Stay with me on this. Instead, several other universes kept popping up, and people and companies kept saying, we're going to build an entire world from the ground up, and we're just going to, boom, throw it all out there. And one of the most successful, narratively speaking at least, was Milestone Comics. And Milestone did 3 things extremely well. First, they did characters who were evocative of the comic book archetypical characters, your Supermans, your Iron Mans, your Batman types. But they did them in ways that were entirely new and entirely different. And they did it with a lot of important and necessary representation. And they did this 25 years ago. And people are still having these arguments. So you got to give Milestone props there. And most importantly, they had Dwayne McDuffie. And Dwayne McDuffie is a gosh darn genius. And Dwayne McDuffie's primary book at Milestone was a book called Icon. Icon was What If Superman, only he landed in the American South pre-Civil War and was African American. So the story of Icon is the story of this character who has spent 150 years not using his powers to save everyone. And then the real protagonist of his book shows up in my number 2, Raquel Irvin, Rocket, sometimes referred to tongue-in-cheek as Rocket the Unwed Mother, which I get it. That's kind of funny. But in any case, she shows up at his house as part of a group of people who intended to rob him. sees Icon using his powers, comes back and convinces him to become a superhero. And throughout the series, Rocket is the driving force of all of the morality of the book. Rocket and her boyfriend have gotten into some really bad stuff. The boyfriend's a jerk. He's the one who got her into the criminal stuff. And of course, she does have a baby during the series, so she ends up being a superhero and a mom. And the most fascinating part of it all is that her powers and her costume and all of the trappings of superherodom aren't really the important part of the book. The important part is watching this character grow up and realize her potential and become such a cool superhero. She should be Icon, but she's not. And she wouldn't take it upon herself to try and be Icon because she's still trying to figure out her own stuff. And I really love the fact that she is clearly the center of attention. In some ways, she and Static are the center, kind of the moral center of everything that Milestone did. And as she comes to terms with herself and, her mind and her brains and her life, and the fact that she has a son now, Rocket becomes more and more interesting, clearly more interesting than Icon. And I believe, I haven't watched the whole series, but I believe on TV in Young Justice, she does in fact grow up to become Icon and join the Justice League. Maybe, I don't know. Nonetheless, if you ever get a chance, if you ever run into the Milestone books, and sadly sometimes you'll run into them in, quarter bins and dime stores and places where books are being thrown out or books are being sold on the cheap to get rid of them, snatch up anything that says Icon, anything that has Rocket on the cover, because you will get a good read, you'll get a fascinating character, and most importantly, you'll get a really cool character to read about, no matter who you are. I feel like representation is very much important and very much problematic even today in comics, but I know that I was reading this book as a 25-year-old Midwestern white guy, and I really, really felt for the character, and I really, really got into her life. So definitely Rocket, my number 2.
There you go. And now we have reached our number 1 positions. And Rodrigo, who is your favorite all-time female superhero right now at this moment?
My favorite all-time female superhero right now at this moment comes from my favorite all-time cartoon right now at this moment, which is Steven Universe. I don't think I have to do a lot of arguing to say that the Crystal Gems are superheroes. I mean, they've got superpowers, and you can't have a show that says Light Construct as often. Without
code names, powers, a pro-social agenda. They go out and fight evil. I will stand beside you, my friend. We will fight the people who tell us they are not.
Yeah,
I don't think anybody would argue that they're not.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, a superhero a lot of the time is defined by the world they exist in, and in like Steven Universe's world is weird enough that it could throw it into question. But if you take a step back from the immediate context of the show, clearly they're superheroes, just like a Super Sentai team are superheroes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even though the world they live in might not be treated as such, they still are by kind of definitionally. Anyway, not to get too bogged down in that. So my number 1, when I started watching the show, I was immediately drawn to Garnet. Garnet has it under control. She's on top of things. She's cool. But as the show went on and I started seeing more and more of this character, and more importantly, more of her backstory, she became, to me, clearly the most compelling character in the show, and that's Pearl. Pearl's backstory is tragic in a way that we don't get to see very often. It's not tragic like Batman's backstory, where a child is like, something bad happens to this child and he had no control over it and no say, and it irrevocably changes him. There's something about Pearl where she seems to have made all the right choices, and yet nothing went right for her. And yet, because she made the right choices, in the end, she's rewarded with good relationships and and sort of and a good life, even though it is in no way at all the life that she wanted or planned for. She still ends up in a good place, and that is the sort of arc that you really just do not get to see very often, and definitely not executed in such a good way, and definitely not with such banging music. So my number one, definitely the most compelling character in the show, and number one female superhero for me, Pearl from Steven Universe.
There you go.
Good choice.
Very good.
Good choice.
Thank you, Rodrigo. All right, my number one, you may be sitting there. I have no idea what Steven's going to pick as his number one because he's already done the Batman analog. He's already done the Supergirl analog. He's already done the Peter Parker analog. Heck, he's even done the Zatara analog. But he hasn't done the Flash analog. And I got to tell you, Jesse Quick, or Jesse Chambers, depending on which way she's going, is my favorite female superhero of all time right now. The daughter of Johnny Quick and Liberty Bell. Originally, she adopted her father's Speed Force equation. She would say that, and she would become one of the fastest women alive. And was really kind of cool. And when she's introduced by Mark Waid in the long-running Flash series from the late 80s, we get to see her become a powerful superhero, a powerful businesswoman because she has to take over her father's industries, or Chambers Industries. We also see her become a mentor to Impulse for quite a while to try to help him control his Speed Force and his impulses. And then we see her, maybe not so much a big favorite move of mine, but then she becomes the new Liberty Bell when she gets her mom's powers, right? Her mom's got the super strength powers, right? So there's something about her, and I loved her costume when she was in the Flash series. I loved her attitude. I love that she was basically, I want to be a businesswoman first, and then I will worry about being a superhero. And each time she kept getting dragged into whatever her father's antics were going on, or the Impulse's antics, or even Wally West's antics at the time. And there's just something about her that was appealing and compelling. And for the longest time, if I just saw her on the cover of a comic, that comic was going in my bag, even if it wasn't, well, I paid for it first, but even if it wasn't an interesting story, just the fact that Jesse Chambers, a.k.a. Jesse Quick, was featured in the issue, hands down, I was buying this. And so she is my number one favorite all-time superhero, female superhero of the moment right now. So there you go. Matthew, who do you have for number one?
My number one is probably the greatest superhero in comic book history. And I say this without a hint of hyperbole, simply because I've always felt like there's something to be said for a superhero who is, I've heard the phrase, a single serving. And I kind of like that. But there's something to be said for a superhero who has a specificity to what they do. And of course, this is a very early superhero. This is my pick from the DC universe. So this is something where you say to yourself, wow, who's in the DC universe? Everybody, like half of Steven's list, and Wonder Woman, and Saturn Girl, and Starfire, and all of these great characters. But before all of them came Abigail Hunkle. Abigail Hunkle was just a nice lady from New York City. She ran a grocery store that her brother-in-law bought her with his illicit winnings at the track. And she ran this grocery store as the nice lady on the corner. You could come down and you could be like, hey, I'm short this week. Ma Hunkle, can you help me out? And she would usually help you out. And one day, racketeers came into her store and they're like, hey, it's a nice store you got here, lady. Something bad if something would happen to it. And Ma Hunkle came out from behind the counter and kicked their butts. But they kidnapped her children. And you do not kidnap Ma Hunkle's children. And in response to her elder son, who's like, man, I wish Green Lantern was here. He's got a costume and a cape. Ma Hunkle went and found some long johns that belonged to her late husband, and a cape that she made out of a bedspread, and a helmet that she made out of her best cooking pot. And the Red Tornado took to the streets. And the Red Tornado found the racketeers and beat them senseless with only the strength of her 2 ham-like fists, took
Didn't she
her
also have a
children home
rolling
and
pin?
kept them safe.
Didn't she also have a rolling
Sometimes.
pin? Yeah.
Not in every adventure. I don't know in that first one if she did. The
Okay.
weird thing about Ma Hunkel is she was around for a long time before and a long time after Red Tornado.
Mm-hmm.
She was around for like a year and a half before there was any sign of the Red Tornado. The most important thing about the Red Tornado was she was almost, again, asterisk, a member of the very first super team in existence, the Justice Society of America, because the Red Tornado came to their first meeting, but caught her red long johns on a nail, ripped the seat out of her costume, and had to hide and then run back home because obviously, you can't go into the Justice Society meeting with a rip in your costume. But yeah, the Red Tornado, I think, is an example to me of almost the purest of superhero tropes in that she's a goofy character. She comes from a comedy strip that's all about tee-hee, silly kids doing silly things. But when it comes right down to it, even in that strip, there's enough drama to where this woman is like, I have to take care of my family. I'm going to put a pot on my head. And you may think that the idea of a woman with a pot on her head wearing scratchy long underwear is goofy. But even in this cartoony Bigfoot world, it's powerful. It's meaningful. It's awesome. And, when I said one person from each universe, I meant it. So I picked Ma Hunkel over Wonder Woman, over Starfire, over Tara, who is evil but still counts, over the dozens of women in the Legion of Superheroes whom I love, over Jesse Quick, who's the only person ever to belong to the Justice League, the Justice Society, and the Teen Titans. I feel like Ma Hunkel, first of all, 1940. She's way early. So, she's setting up some of these tropes that don't quite exist yet. But she's also just a nice mom who wants to run her grocery store and take care of her kids. And eventually, she ends up as the official caretaker of the Justice League's, the Justice Society headquarters. And there's a wonderful moment in a story where she's cleaning up and they're talking about their earliest adventures. And she's like, yeah, I was there that night. And all of the heroes are like, oh my God, why didn't you come out? We wanted you to join us. You were awesome. And she's like, I didn't have a magic ring or a funny helmet or powers. And all of the Justice Society members are like, yeah, but we all loved you. We looked up to you because you did what you did with just a pot on your head and your 2 fists. And that, my friends, is why the greatest superhero in existence, bar none, as of right now, 8:15 p.m. on 9/10/2019. Ask me tomorrow. It'll be a different answer. The Red Tornado, Maxine Hunkel. She's awesome.
There you go. Rodrigo, did you see the deep cut joke that Matthew threw in there?
Which one?
The one where he said,
I feel like that was a smorgasbord.
the one where he said, if you think wearing a scratchy long underwear is goofy.
Oh.
It's always fun when Steven picks up on my references.
All right, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. There are our top 5 female superheroes. Here's what you need to do. Head over to our Discord server and jump into the top 5 channel and share your top 5 female superheroes. I'm sure other people are already doing it even as I speak. Heck, they may have already done it before this episode even finished airing. Or you can jump over to Majorspoilers.com, and in the comments section for this episode, you can share your top 5 female superheroes. Or you could go over to Twitter, and you could share your top 5 female superheroes there using the hashtag Top5Podcast. And let's see if we can get any traction with that over there. So lots of places where you can share your lists and people can read your lists. Why? Because everybody loves a list, and we will talk with you soon.
This podcast is copyright 2019 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.